You're tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. This podcast will contain strong language and spoilers for decades-old media properties.
Join us.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast where we examine pop culture franchises of the VHS era and improv news stories, even though there's nothing new under the sun and everything we do is just screaming to no avail into the void. To imagine how we might improve our favorite movies, TV, and games. I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we were Raised by Rentals. Mike! Warning, this program may contain descriptions of violence, explicit situations, or other triggering content not suitable for younger listeners, people with nervous dispositions, and little fucking pussies who need to man up and stop crying already.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I'm sorry. That's the young Gen X in me that can't help myself.
You know what? I'm right there with you, man. So, but yes, it is good that you gave the trigger warning, considering this is part of the trigger warning double feature. So
that's right. When I first started writing that, I was writing it as like a trigger warning to myself because I thought, oh, this will be fun. Like trigger warning to me because I have no idea what sort of horrible things to expect today, and I should just be ready. Exactly. I should just be ready for anything because, yeah, as part 2 of our trigger warning twin bill and our follow-up to our last episode, Never Killed a Dog, which was my original story concept that we then spun into something different. Now it's your turn to bring an original story to the table. So against all former precedent that we've set in the show, we're just going to stop burying the lead and get to the point. Mike, what are we doing?
So I'll be honest. This has been a crazy couple of weeks for me. Been very, 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 very busy. So I didn't have a whole hell of a lot of time to come up with an original idea or even kind of retrofit one of my old stories to work here. So I did a writing practice that you and I have done many, many times over the years. I believe that you got the idea from Ray Bradbury. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's right. In the description of how he used to, at one point in his life, write a short story every single day.
Yep. And it was what? He would open up the dictionary and point at a word?
Yeah, basically. And I think the most famous example of that we mentioned here in the show before is Fahrenheit 451, was originally called The Fireman because, yeah, he opened up a dictionary, pointed at the word fireman one day and just started writing. And what turned into one of his only novels he ever wrote that was one story and not like a collection of short stories together like the Martian Chronicles, he just kept writing and came up with this genius, classic. But yeah,
Absolutely.
He just pointed at a word in the dictionary.
And see, now I find that not only fascinating, but a lot of fun to do. And so that's like one of those things when I'm trying to write short stories, I like to do that is I'll open the dictionary and pick a word. Or more often than not, I'm usually at work when inspiration strikes. It's like it'll be a quiet night. I'll look around the room in my office and try to find like one item or one word and just go with that and start writing. So that's what I did for this. I was trying to think of like, what can I write about? What can I write? What would be triggering? And immediately I dropped onto body horror. I'm like, we haven't done any body horror. So I'm like, all right, what could I do with body horror? Now, the word that popped into my head was I was looking around my office and we have a little alarm with, a little glass panel that says break glass in case of, trouble. And you have or a case of emergency. And I was like, okay, broken glass. I'm like, broken glass is always creepy. I was thinking of Die Hard where dude's stepping on the broken glass. I'm like, getting cut with broken glass fucking sucks. Anyone who's ever been cut by glass knows it hurts. It's like a paper cut times 10. It fucking sucks. So I was like, all right, what if somebody got, cut by broken glass and ended up getting an infection? And that's kind of where the story picked up in my head.
Okay.
So the basic premise that I have here is we're going to have a kind of a shut-in type of guy, a loner guy who he works from home, doesn't really have a lot of people in his life, kind of minds his own business, but he's a bit of a hypochondriac. It's like he's that type of guy that, if he gets the sniffles, he starts immediately reading up on WebMD and thinks he has 18 types of cancer. He's that kind of guy. I mean, we all know that guy, or we've all been that guy at one point.
Oh, yeah. We have those people in our families who are always calling us and texting us with like the latest updates. And it's like, Okay.
Yeah, no, I remember when COVID first came on the scene and the amount of people that had convinced themselves in my life that they had COVID, and I was like, "You're fine, don't worry about it, you're okay." So yeah, it's very easy to get swayed when you're not feeling well and you see shit online. So I mean, hell, I've done it. I can't tell you how many times I've had a little tweak or a muscle pain, and I look up online, I'm like, "Oh God, I'm having a stroke." You know, it's like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was convinced at one point that I was having an issue with my spleen of all things, because I kept getting this weird pain all the time in like this very specific like localized area in my
mhm.
rib cage, and I was like, what is that? It's like, I mean, I know I used to smoke, and every time I get like a chest pain, I'd be like, oh shit, like the lung cancer caught up to me or something. But I'm like,
Right?
no, it's too low for that, and like it's not close enough to my liver, and like what the fuck is this? And I was like driving myself crazy like online one night, up too late, had too many things to drink, and I think I lost an entire night of sleep because I thought I had some kind of like spleen infection, and I think it took the cold light of morning to get me to like just fucking have someone look at it already. And yeah, it just turned out to be an issue with my diaphragm that was like very minor.
And see, and that's the thing. Like I've definitely done that myself. And working nights, one of the things I've talked about over the years is that one of my most loathed things about working the overnight is when it's quiet. You're alone with your thoughts a lot. Now, sometimes for creativity's sake, that's really good because you have time to write, you have time to draw, I have time to work on podcasts. Like, I kind of can fill my time with creative pursuits when I do have downtime. But then there's other times, like especially if you're not feeling well, where your mind starts to wander and you start thinking bad thoughts about, well, what if it's this? What if it's that? Oh God, am I dying? You know, and I've had that happen a few times, particularly with like chest pains where I'm like, oh, am I having a heart attack? Like, now, granted, the one time it saved my life because I thought I was having a heart attack and I was on my way to work and ended up going to the ER. Turned out I had pneumonia so bad that my left lung was completely filled with fluid.
Oh, fun.
And had I not gone and they got the fluid out of my chest, it was beginning to put pressure on my heart because it was spilling out into my chest cavity. So that was a several day stay in the hospital to get better, but thankfully there was no damage done to my heart. But because of that scare, I've had that happen multiple times where it's like I'll get a weird chest pain. The next thing you know, I'm talking to my doctor and going to get checked out, and they're like, "Your heart's totally fine, dude. It was a pulled muscle." It's like it's always
Yeah.
something like that. Like I
Yeah.
tweaked a muscle. Anyway, all of that to say, this is that type of guy. So our main character, which I just named Dwayne in my notes because I'm like, hey, that's a name we haven't used yet.
Sure.
So I was thinking he is a total, I don't want to say total shut-in, but just a loner. He keeps to himself. The kind of person I'm picturing is Crispin Glover in Willard.
Okay. Yeah. I like it.
Like very shy, very quiet, very, obviously smart and caring, but maybe just a little weird. But yeah, so where our story kind of kicks off would be, I want to have Dwayne. I set this in Detroit just because I figured I wanted a more like a city, but have to have kind of more rundown, quiet areas. And I know Detroit has a lot of that where it's like there's still one or two good houses on the street, but a lot of shut down houses, kind of like downtown Niagara Falls is right now, where
Yeah.
there's you still have a lot of good homes and a lot of good places, but there's also a lot of neighborhoods where there's only like maybe one or two houses. So, just because then it would be a little easier to make things be quiet.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that happening. So it's like you're in a big noisy city, but you're in a part of that city where you're a little bit more isolated from the constant, sounds of traffic and fire alarms and police cars and stuff like that.
I was picturing movies like Barbarian or was it Don't Breathe, like where it's a house on a street that has like there are other houses, but maybe no one lives in these, or maybe there's like it's kind of like you have that one house that like a dude owns that does nothing with it and just lets it kind of rot on the property, like those kind of places. Like I said, unfortunately, what's happening in downtown Niagara Falls.
Yeah, I was going to say I can think of several neighborhoods, and I haven't lived or even visited in years, but I can think of several neighborhoods that I remember growing up where it was like there'd be like one house, like dilapidated house on a block, and the rest of the block was like overgrown empty field, or they had like
Mm-hmm.
torn down or burned down the other houses, and you saw the old foundations. And I used to always wonder, like, why is it just sitting like that? Like, why is it just that one house? Is
Right.
no one going to rebuild, or like does no one live there? Like, and it was weird because yeah, in the middle of a city, and Niagara Falls isn't a huge city, but a city nonetheless. And yeah, you'd have these like lonely blocks where for some reason there's just like one old creepy house.
Right. And that drives me crazy because, again, like, you saw Niagara Falls when it was more in its prime. Like, I grew up in Niagara Falls, 1980 on up to 91 before I moved out of the city. And yeah, back then, like, every street, you did have to play good street, bad street. I mean, it was still, a city.
Yep.
But at the same time, like, there were people, there was, a lot of stuff going on. Like, you couldn't just walk down a street and not see anybody, but now you can walk down a street and not see anybody. And that's kind of creepy. And I feel like that's a good setting for a horror story.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely like that. Yeah. It's on a side note. It was weird the last time that I visited the house that I lived in when I lived in the Falls, and I kid you not, this house that wasn't the nicest house maybe in the neighborhood, but it was an old house that had been kept in pretty good condition in the years I lived there. It was renovated after I left, and actually I ended up knowing some of the people who rented the apartments that were built into the house. And I was really shocked when I went there to see what it looked like, thinking that maybe there would still be some people like renting this, kind of nice house. And instead, it was so messed up that I literally could see into the living room from the sidewalk because there were holes in the walls.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and like somebody had backed their SUV over the hedgerow fence around the yard, just backed it up and like parked it in the middle of the yard with the fence crushed underneath it. The garage was like listing to the side, like literally about to fall over. And it was just an absolute wreck. The whole house was just a wreck. It was dirty and it looked abandoned, but clearly somebody had like parked their car in the fucking yard under the crabapple tree. And yeah, it did not surprise me much when somebody burned the house down twice. Mm-hmm. But it was sad.
It absolutely is a shame because I remember that house. I remember when we were first working on our first comic book, and you were living there, and we would go there to work on gray shading on the computer because we were we were pro and we had to use and you had a computer, and Corel Draw 97. God, right. But yeah, no, I mean, and that was absolutely a really cool house, but it is a shame. I will say one of the things that has given me a little bit of happiness is anytime I'm downtown for any reason other than work, like if I have to, like I had to go to the DMV a couple weeks ago to renew my license, and just because I never got the email or a notification in the mail, and I happened to look at my license and I'm like, oh yeah, that expired on my birthday. Well, fuck. So, went down to the DMV and got it taken care of. But
that sucks.
Funny thing is, like, thank God I didn't need it because like I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get pulled over or nothing. But yeah, it had been expired for a couple of months.
Not to keep derailing, but yeah, that happened to me when I moved from New York to Texas. I completely forgot that I was supposed to renew my New York license, and in the move and change of address, I'm sure that the paperwork should have been forwarded to me or something, but I never got it. And yeah, I worked for months before I needed my license for something. Oh, I think I just got like ID'd at buying beer or whatever, and I noticed that it was expired. And I was like, fuck, now I have an out of state expired license. So I couldn't get it renewed. I had to apply for a license as if I were a new driver in Texas and like take the exam and the driving test and everything all over again from scratch. Oh, it was a bitch.
See, now for me, it happened because I was talking to my coworker. She had just gotten her new license in the mail. Like she got the enhanced license and went and got a new photo. And she's like, "Oh my God!" She's like, "Look at this photo. I look terrible." And I was like, "You think that's bad?" And I was like, "Check this out." And I pulled out mine because I often think I look like Nick Nolte in the 2002 Hulk, where he's the homeless guy. I kind of just look like a crazy homeless dude. And I'm like, hey, look at this. And we both were laughing at it. And I went to go put it away. And then I was like, wait a second. Oh, shit, that expired. Then I was like, well, I better go take care of this. But what I was saying is, anytime I'm downtown for any type of reason other than work, I'll kind of drive through my old stomping grounds. I'll drive by old Sacred Heart, which was the school I went to, which is now being converted into apartment buildings, which is really freaking weird. And I'll drive down like all the little side streets that I used to walk to school on, just to kind of see. And a lot of the houses are like either boarded up or, they're for sale, but have huge overgrown lawns and just kind of falling apart. And it's sad to see. But I got to my old house, the house I grew up in, and whoever is living there now is taking wonderful care of it. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's been, repainted, re-sided. Like it's just they clearly care about that house, and it just kind of warmed the cockles of my heart to see like, hey, someone appreciates that house. I loved that house because I really did like that house growing up. But anyway, we're kind of all over the place right off the bat here, which is something we said we were going to try not to do. But so yes, so start of the story, we have a hypochondriac shut-in named Dwayne, works from home, doesn't really have, any family, friends, romantic prospects, just kind of minds his own business, keeps to himself. I figured where the story would start is he decides to go out and grab a few items at, a little, like a quick stop type thing, little, drug, not maybe not drugstore, but like convenience store type of thing. Heads down there and ends up getting chased by someone who wants to mug him. So the way I'm picturing it is like kind of picture like it's after the workday. It's like maybe 6 o'clock. It's not quite dark, but it's getting there. It's like, you know what? I'm going to run to the store, grab a few items for the night. And on his way home, starts to get followed, realizes he's being chased, takes off running, ends up hiding in a dumpster to try to avoid being mugged. But when he jumps in, he cuts his arm all up on broken glass, which is going to lead to the fear of what's going to happen to Dwayne. So where I'm picturing the story kind of kicking off is him going home, cleaning the wound, wrapping it, and just kind of having his night. And the next morning when he wakes up, looking at the wound again and looking up online various infections that can happen.
Okay, yeah, like he looks at the wound and there's like some tiny little spot where he's like, what's that? And I'm just picturing him like holding his arm up, trying to get a close look at it, like really close to his face, and then like moving over to like the window to the sunlight to get a better look. And he's like poking and prodding, and I don't know why in my head I'm thinking he's being a little rough with it, like maybe he shouldn't poke the wounds so much.
Yep. That's actually, I have that in my notes.
Okay,
so
good.
You're right on the same page.
It just makes people feel uncomfortable, and I'm immediately getting the vibe from the way you're describing this guy that like we're looking for just general discomfort wherever we can introduce it.
Oh yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like that is exactly what he would do. He would look at the wound and be like, oh, that don't look right, and start picking at it, which of course is going to irritate the wound even more. So as the days, go on, the wound is going to get more and more infected and bothered because he can't keep his hands off of it. But he's not putting two and two together with him prodding at it that's why it's hurting. He's convinced that he has something. So, maybe he starts looking up shit online and comes across the necrotizing fasciitis and start thinking, oh God, what if I have the flesh-eating bacteria?
Nice.
So now I know that this being a podcast, it's kind of hard to add the visual element, but I keep picturing like these close-ups of like arm wounds where he's like just scratching at it and picking at the skin, and just like it's all black and blue and getting like swollen and pussy because he can't keep his damn hands off of it.
Yeah, you know what is coming to mind, and it's one of those movies that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, a trigger warning movie, but is Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream.
Oh yeah.
Darren Aronofsky uses, or whoever his cinematographer was for that movie, they use a lot of like repetitive shots to kind of like set the vibe. So like when they're partying, it's like jumping around a lot, but whenever the characters are getting sick and they're dealing with their pretty severe heroin addictions, you get a lot of like quick close-up shots of like, bloody like needle marks and like infected, like open wounds and like just sweaty faces, and just there's a whole lot of like these really uncomfortable images that they just kind of flash on the screen, and I think that's exactly what I'm seeing here. Where in my head is every time Dwayne goes to like poke at his arm, it's like the camera is suddenly like an inch from his arm, and you see his finger with his dirty fingernail all huge. Just and you're hearing like these like squishing noises, like you're stirring pasta,
Yep. Very wet and goopy.
Yeah, that alone would make somebody uncomfortable.
Well, and that's the thing about like body horror. It's such a great storytelling device for a visual medium because you can do those kind of shots. And I can't think of a single body horror movie that hasn't made me squirm, because like just the idea of something going wrong with your body, where it's not just like, it's not an external force, it's something within your body going wrong that's just like, like it just makes me squeam. So
okay, so what's the hook here? Obviously the body horror is what is drawing us in, and it's going to kind of drive the the tone and the atmosphere. But are we looking at just somebody who's like descending into madness, trying to deal with this infection and thinking that he's dying and it's getting worse and worse, or is there some sort of I don't want to say supernatural, but is there some other element to this that maybe this infection isn't what it seems to be on the surface?
No. I was actually going straight up with more psychosis. Like this is in his head. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And the reason it's getting worse physically is because he can't stop prodding at it. So it's like, if he would just leave it alone and let it heal, he'd be fine. But he can't. Because whatever is driving him, he keeps picking at it. So I'm picturing, like I said, so we start the story with him. We meet Dwayne. We see just kind of a little quick snippet of his life. Living alone in a nice apartment, but not in the greatest neighborhood. Finish up work for the day, head off to the convenience store, get chased on his way home, cut himself, and then we get all the close-up body horror images that we were just discussing. But so yeah, I would have I was thinking Dwayne would eventually go to his doctor and talk to him about it and find out that yes, his arm is indeed infected, but that's because he wouldn't stop poking at it. So the doctor would give him some kind of salve or medicine like a penicillin type, and just be like, leave it alone. So
okay, yeah, I like this. I think that there's a story here. But I think what we need to have some other elements, like you mentioned this doctor. I think we need to put some other people into the story who can experience what the audience is experiencing by reacting to what Dwayne, right? Because I agree that I think a lot of this is going to be his own neurosis and psychosis. Like this is just stuck in his head. But right. I think it's always interesting when you have somebody else around, who can maybe try to talk some sense into him, or can just be revulsed by what they're seeing on this guy's arm. So
no, I totally agree.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, if he's living in this apartment building, or you said it was it a house or is it an apartment building?
Like an apartment. Like I was thinking, like a house converted into a couple apartments, like one of those types of things.
Okay, yeah, that would work. Or even if it was like a duplex, because it just gives us somebody else who can be at the house, who is around enough where again they can sort of experience it, maybe offer help, maybe offer a little bit of like neighborly friendliness. And so yeah, to your point, when we start the story, we kind of see a little bit of Dwayne's routine. Maybe we're hearing some kind of chill music, maybe something that's a little bit happier than we're expecting to hear, like a little jazzy. And we're seeing Dwayne go about his life. And I think of somebody who is kind of obsessive, that I'm just thinking like an OCD type of personality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The kind of thing where as we see him kind of going about his routine, getting ready for the day, it's like he's one of these guys where he has to put the deodorant on under each arm, the exact same number of swipes, and has to line up his toothpaste tube in exactly the right way with like, the floss and the toothpaste at just the right angle. So we're seeing a lot of him like fiddling and fussing with things. And And maybe I think it'd be even interesting if we see that he's frustrated by it, like even himself, like he's frustrated by it. Maybe you see the look on his face where
Oh,
he's like exasperated, like, oh God, I gotta fix it. Oh God, that's not right. Oh man, that's not right. And again, that I think that ramps up the uncomfortableness because the audience
I
is going
like
to be
it.
like, just fucking leave it alone already, but he can't stop himself, from fixing his collar to lay down exactly in the right way.
Oh, I like that, dude. I didn't even think about that, but I like that a lot. In fact, okay, so now I know this is going to be one of those things like some of our other episodes, like the Vanga bus and dumpster fire, or was it hot garbage, where we kind of backpedal a lot to try to like remake the story. Because again, for the audience, this is literally a basic idea thought up from a word. So it's like we kind of have to work the story out and make it happen. So
Yeah.
what you just described, I really like, but I kind of figured like, okay, picture the opening of the movie. We get the opening credits, we get the jazzy music, like you were saying, and we see Dwayne wake up. Like he gets up and just kind of like the music is playing over the top, goes into the bathroom, does exactly what you said. Like, we see his morning routine, like maybe hops in the shower, gets out, has like the 1, 2, 3 under the left arm, 1, 2, 3 under the right arm, sets his toothpaste down, does all that. We see him typing away at his computer later in the day. And then like maybe it'll say like, Monday, 7 a.m. We see that. And then while the opening credits are still rolling, we see like Tuesday, 7 a.m. Gets up, same exact routine. Goes through.
Nice.
Then like Wednesday, 7 a.m. Same exact fucking routine. And like we get to Thursday, and maybe like this is where we see Dwayne a little like aggravated. Like he sets his toothpaste down in a different way, and then like he stops and he looks at it. Maybe like he goes to grab it, pulls his hand back, like takes a deep breath, like no, I'm not gonna do. And then he's like, and he has to turn it. So we see like he's clearly struggling.
No, I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I like the idea that immediately the audience can feel his frustration and vice versa. Yeah, and I think it should be a really uncomfortable amount of time before he's finally ready to leave the house. Like we're
Right.
seeing his morning routine like over and over and over again, and his morning routine is like taking him to his desk where he sits at the computer and logs on, and he's an engineer or something where he's just going to be like working by himself on software or whatever all day long. And yeah, and then at some point like you can either show like what he does when he's done with work, like here's his evening routine, he shuts it off, he makes dinner, he like straightens up, maybe he like sits and read a book and he puts the book back on the shelf and takes it off and puts it back and takes it off and puts it back because it's not quite straight, or whatever. But there should be like this uncomfortable amount of time where he decides he's gonna walk to the store, or maybe he walks to the store every day. Maybe he's one of these guys who goes to the little gas station convenience store every single day, and he buys like the same like little bag of Lay's or Ben and Jerry's pint or whatever. It's like the same thing, and he walks in, and this is where we get the clerk at the store who's like, "Hey Dwayne," like every day, like, "Hey Dwayne, hey Dwayne," and maybe this one time.
I like that. Yeah.
Hang on, let me come back to the store because something just occurred to me, but I don't want to. I'm afraid that it's going to just ramp up into the story, and I'm like, hang on a second, one more detail.
yeah, go for it. I'm loving this.
Which is, we talked about having somebody like live in the house, and I'm thinking, let's make this a duplex. And again, it's kind of like this lonely house on the street, whether it's the only house or it's like the only one that isn't boarded up for several, doors either way. But he has this neighbor who lives on the other side, and as we're seeing Dwayne's routine, we're seeing that he has this neighbor who leaves for work around the same time, or is leaving for work to his like construction job. Like it's just some dude, and I don't know why in my head I'm picturing like he looks like Jason Mewes. I don't know why, but like but just kind of like a like a long-haired string bean of a dude, but he's got this construction job, and he leaves in the morning, and then he comes home, and every night he comes home and he's got like his little igloo cooler and like a 6-pack, and he sits on the porch and cracks a beer and just like so he has his same routine of like chilling on the porch with a beer, and then he'll say hi to Dwayne when Dwayne leaves to go to the store. I just want to put that guy there, right? Let's put that guy there. Name him something. I like it. And then
go with Jay. Jay works.
Yeah, Jay works. And then we see Dwayne go to the store, and we do this like a couple of times. We see this montage routine as he goes through his day, and of course his outfit is like barely different. It's like a different shade of green shirt or whatever every day, right? And this one time he goes into the store, and as he walks in, the clerk says something to him about whatever the favorite snack is. It doesn't matter. Like, but it's going to be like, oh, hey, Dwayne, sorry, man, we're out of the chocolate Ben and Jerry's, but I got the half baked or some other flavor. And this is when Dwayne's going to stop and like take a step forward, take a step back, take a step forward, and it's like he's trapped in the middle of the store trying to decide, like, fuck, what do I do?
What do I do? Yeah.
And I think that this is when we end the montage and we launch into, he's going to have a real bad night. And his bad night starts with, fuck, they don't have my favorite snack. And then he's going to spend like a stupid amount of time in the store looking for something else. And of course, nothing is going to be right. Nothing's the right thing.
Right.
And maybe he buys like a bunch of shit that he doesn't really need, or he just buys nothing. But whatever it is, it's like he's in the store longer than usual, so that when he leaves, it's like darker than usual. And this is why he's like out at night in a neighborhood where you probably shouldn't be walking around. But yeah, maybe he's got like a big bag full of shit that he bought, like everything, and that's going to be like a sign. Oh, hey, this guy's got some money. Look at that big bag of shit from the gas station convenience store. Like nobody goes and buys a big bag of stuff like that from the gas station. Right. And yeah, then these muggers are gonna come up on him, and it's gonna start this launch into the worst night that Dwayne's gonna have.
I love it. That's fucking perfect. So yeah, I like where you're going with this with the neighbor too. Originally I was picturing like, like a kind of a, I don't want to say like Shelley Duvall type character, but I was picturing kind of like a meek Shelley Duvall in The Shining type character, who's kind of maybe sort of interested in Dwayne, but he's also like super nervous around everybody. So just kind of like standoffish. So maybe there's 3 people living in the, in that area, like, or maybe she's the next door neighbor or something like that.
Yeah.
Like she sees him when he goes out, and she's like, hi, Dwayne. And he just kind of like nods and keeps walking type of thing. Yeah. Like she clearly wants to talk to him, but she's also a little awkward, Yeah.
Or maybe she works at the store. That would be fine.
Oh yeah.
Either way. Yeah. I agree. I don't think it really matters, but yeah, we just introduce her into this routine.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So let's do that. Maybe she's the clerk. I like that idea. So we have we have Jay, who's his downstairs neighbor, who's like you said, he's the construction worker that likes to hang out on the porch and drink beer after his shift. And is just kind of just watches from his porch. Like I think we've all done that at one time or another, especially on like a slow summer evening. Just sit on the porch and enjoy the time. So he goes to the store and to your point, maybe I like the idea that it's ice cream. Like he always gets like, maybe it's like, one of those like good humor bars, like the little, the Star Crunchies or whatever they're called.
Oh yeah.
He always goes and gets like, that's his evening treat, as he allows himself an ice cream, and they didn't have it. So now he does the whole thing, like you said, like he's kind of stuck in that loop, and to your point, buys a bunch of stuff, maybe like, the girl at the counter will just call her Shelly. Fuck it. So Shelly is just like, wow, you're buying a lot of different stuff tonight, Dwayne. He's like, yeah, I just felt like trying something new. Like maybe he's making excuses, like doesn't know what to do, gets out of there. These 3 guys notice them, and maybe the one guy is paying attention to that bag and starts following him. And, Dwayne is still stuck in his head mentally about like what he just did, what he just went through, how it's different. He's got, like he's clearly struggling. So he's not paying attention to the person coming up behind him. So I think what would be kind of creepy here is to have him like, we see like, I'm picturing like a long shot, almost like that Texas Chainsaw Massacre shot where you see the van and the surrounding field. Like, is this real tiny? So like pull the camera back and you see Dwayne like walking down the street, and this guy, maybe in a hoodie, like with his hands in his pockets, walking behind him, looking around. It's like, oh shit, something's going to happen to Dwayne. Have the guy like come up and grab the bag out of his hands, and Dwayne just kind of stop and look and have him be like, give me your fucking money. Like, Dwayne go to hand him his wallet, and then have the guy like, I don't know, maybe he's got a knife, something that threatens Dwayne into running, so he just like panics and runs. And now keep in mind, just putting him off his routine slightly really has a toll on him. So imagine what this would do to the guy. So mentally, this would be very scarring for someone that deals with this type of OCD. I mean, it'd be scarring for anyone, but it would really, fuck up his routine. So, he runs, jumps in the dumpster, hides, but he, like I said at the start, he falls on like a ton of broken glass in there. Like, picture the type of dumpster where like people were like throwing broken fluorescent bulbs and shit like that. And it's just like, I think immediately of the media play dumpster, because I used to always have to change out all the fluorescent bulbs, and there would be like literally like 50 in a fucking box, and you'd throw it in the dumpster in the box, but then people would throw garbage on top of that. And you would just hear all the cracking and crunching from those fucking bulbs.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually interesting too. That's an interesting element, because when I used to work in retail, we would replace those bulbs. I worked in some stores where we weren't allowed to replace them. Like, you had to wait for like the company sanctioned like repairman to come. And then I worked in some stores where they didn't care, but people would always be like, "Oh, don't break it. Like, that shit in there give you cancer." Like, I heard that all the time. So what if, while we have this whole like introductory like montage scene thing going on, at some point while Dwayne's walking to the store, like maybe we see like a couple of like dumb like 12-year-old kids in like the alleyway around the corner, and they're just smashing fluorescent bulbs on the ground and inside the dumpster, and then like some guy runs out of the back of whatever store that was, like a little hardware store or whatever, and it's like, "You fucking kids," and chases them off, but there's like broken fluorescent glass. Just like set that, like that's like Chekhov's broken glass, but like,
yes.
And then later on, when we see Dwayne, not that later on, we see him jump into that dumpster, immediately the audience is going to recoil like, "Oh, fuck, they're jumping into a pile of broken glass." Like, we don't have to see it to know that happens and hear that crunch.
Yep, I was going to say that I think the visual of him jumping in and the lid coming down over top and just hearing that crunching of the glass would be enough to be like, fuck.
I'm getting the willies already just thinking about that.
I know, right? Like, because I mean that like I said, anyone that's been cut by glass knows that fucking pain, and it's like, imagine jumping on a pile of it. Like, fuck that. Yeah, it's especially those fluorescent bulbs, because the glass is so fine, like it would get in the cuts, and so yeah. So basically, we see the robber. He goes running by, misses Dwayne completely, and we see maybe Dwayne's sitting there like shaking in the dumpster. Like, we see blood on his arms. He's like looking at his phone, like holding it, shaking. Maybe he calls 911, is like trying to get help, but the police don't show. It's like, because the area, it's
right?
like, they're like, "Yeah, we'll get someone out as soon as we can." And like, he's sitting there shaking, and we could see like the time on his clock. Maybe it says like, it's like 9 o'clock or 9:05 or something, like when he calls, and then he's still sitting there shaking, and we see him holding his phone, and it's like after 10, and it's like he's still by himself in the fucking dumpster, rocking back and forth, bleeding, and eventually like pokes his head out, looks around, sees that no one's there, and starts to make his way back home. By this point, Jay is going to be inside sleeping. He's had his drinks for the night. So Dwayne makes his way up into his apartment. We see him get into his like very brightly lit, sterile looking bathroom, like blood all over him. He's got, his arms are all bloody from the glass. Gets, takes his clothes off. It's like shaking the whole time. Gets the hydrogen peroxide and starts like cleaning his wounds. And he's just like, yeah, I'm just like picturing like close-ups of him like washing glass out of his arm and then like rubbing it like with a shaking hand, like have a cotton ball with hydrogen peroxide and like dabbing at it with a shaking hand.
Well, plus, I love the fact you mentioned like blood all over. We talked about him jumping into this dumpster full of broken glass. It's almost worse if it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Like, he's got not just one wound, but like maybe both of his forearms are just all like sliced up. And oh god.
That's kind of what I'm picturing, is just like a lot of little cuts, and just, of course, it's going to get worse when he starts picking at it. But so yeah, he cleans himself up, and he gets the gauze out and wraps his arms. So now he's got like, both of his forearms are all wrapped up, and maybe he's got like a couple band-aids on his face where he got a few cuts, few like bandages on his legs and stuff. Because like I'm picturing him in pants and a t-shirt, so it wouldn't be too bad, but like his exposed flesh, like his arms and his face, might have gotten the bulk of it
for sure.
So he goes to bed, still shaky. The next morning his alarm goes off at 7, and maybe his whole routine is thrown off. which is just going to add another layer for him. Like, maybe he hits snooze for the first time,
Right.
and it, like, wakes up. He's like, oh God, like, goes into the bathroom, like, unwraps his arms, like, cleans the wounds again, like, almost like adding that to his routine now. Goes through and he's, typing at work. We see maybe he gets like some DoorDash or something, like, in the middle of the day. And then that night, maybe he grabs his keys to go out of the house and stops. And then does that, like, back and forth, and then sets his keys back down and goes and just sits in his chair in silence, like, doesn't do anything. And then we see, like, the next day be like Tuesday, and then we see he does the same thing. And again, gets those keys, goes to go out, back and forth, sits down, boom, Wednesday. Maybe at this point we see, like, we open with him looking at the wounds and we do that close up of him, like, picking at them. So it's like, it's looking worse.
Well, I love this idea, where he's trapped in this sort of like new routine. But this new routine is this sort of fear. But let's add in like the scratching. I would picture him immediately after he changes those bandages and he tries to get back to his normal routine. Like, he's trying to brush his teeth and comb his hair, and maybe he's like looking at the clock and he's like getting nervous and anxious because it's like 20 minutes later than it's supposed to be, or an hour later than it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then he has that sort of like crackhead itch, or that desire that people have, people who like pick their hair and things like that, where you just do it self-consciously. So we start seeing him itch his forearms, maybe like and you can picture me doing this right now, where you kind of cross your arms and you're scratching each forearm with each hand, you know what I mean? And there's going to be that one spot that you're going to scratch more and more and more on the outside of your forearm. And then, later on, we see him go grab the keys and stop. He puts the keys up, and he stands at the door for a minute, and he crosses his arms and scratch. He goes to sit down and crosses his arms, scratch. Tuesday, same thing. And then by Wednesday, it's like he doesn't even have the bandages on anymore. He's just scratching. And this whole time, we're doing these like quick little cut zooms where it's like, first we saw the bandage, then we saw a bloody bandage, and now we just see him like raking at the skin on his arm.
Oh, God. That gave me the willies.
Me too. I had to stop saying it. I had to mute for a second because I was like, oh God,
Oh, dude, I was literally like rubbing my forearms like, it's fucking gross.
Me too. I was like acting it out, and I'm like,
Oh, dude, I fucking love it. So yeah, like, so the wounds are clearly not getting better because he can't fucking leave him alone. So we want to have that scene, like, where he, eventually starts looking stuff up online, and maybe he doesn't come across the necrotizing fasciitis right away. Like, he comes across a couple other things, like various infections, like what could happen from broken glass, like what type of infections can you get from a dirty wound, that type of thing, and eventually calls his doctor and goes and, like, we could do the scene where it's like, like do the whole next day thing how we've been doing, and be like Thursday, but instead just already show like he's at the 11 a.m. he's sitting in the doctor's office, like on the examination table, just kind of waiting, and the doctor comes in and is like, we never gave him a last name, so Mr. Craig, I was looking over your records here, and it's like, you should be completely fine. Let's take a look at those wounds. Like, something like, you're healthy. Everything came back good except these cuts, type of thing. So he looks at the wounds and is like, oh, wow. Okay. He's like, and you said this was from just a cut, right? Like, and he explains the whole, like, yeah, I hid in a dumpster because these guys were trying to rob me, and I ended up getting my arms all cut up on this glass. And he looks at it and is like, well, it looks very irritated. Have you been picking at it, or have you been scratching it, or what, stuff like that? And I'd be like, no, not at all. Just totally lie about it. And have him give him like, some kind of salve. Tell him, keep it clean, keep it bandaged, change the bandages every day, type of thing. Like, gives him the whole rundown of how to take care of it, and like, you'll heal up just fine. So Dwayne gets, we see maybe he's at the pharmacy, gets his medicine. Maybe even he could run into Shelly while he's there. Like, she could be like, oh, hey, Dwayne, how you doing? I haven't seen you lately, because she saw him every day forever. And him just be like, hi. And he's like, I got to go. And it just takes off. Because it's like,
I love that.
This is all out of his routine.
No, I love that. I was I was going to suggest something like having the receptionist at the doctor's office make chit chat with him or something. Again, just get to have him interact with some other people,
Mhm.
because everybody else in the story besides him is kind of like a proxy for the audience. Because Dwayne, he's not, he doesn't talk, he's quiet, he's weird. So yeah, no, I think that's perfect. Have him bump into Shelly. Maybe she's got like a brown bag full of groceries or something, or clothes from the laundromat or whatever. Like she's headed home, walking down the street. Yeah, have him bump into her, like you said, and she's trying to be all friendly and happy. And it's obvious, even more so in this scene than when we saw him previously, that she's like flirting with him, because now she's bumped into him not at work. So like it
Right.
doesn't have to be explicit, but like the implication there is like, oh well, hey, do you want to get like a cup of coffee or something? And he's just like, hi, and just
I
like walks
I,
away.
I gotta go. It's just like, meow. But yeah, no, I fucking love that. Like, so we can have we have that little run in like right outside the pharmacy. He takes off on his own. We see, Shelly looks kind of disappointed and is like, well, what the fuck? And then maybe we see Dwayne like coming home, and maybe Jay's there on his day off or something. He's just sitting there drinking, like, hey, Dwayne, want a brew? And he's like, no, I
Yeah,
gotta go inside, and like running something like, all right, suit yourself. More for me. Keeps drinking him
yeah.
back. So we see Dwayne go upstairs, and he, unwraps his arms, and maybe like we see briefly, like we see his arms, and we see like, yeah, it's not good. It's definitely bad. But then like we see a close up on Dwayne's face, and then see the wounds again, and they look 10 times worse. So like
Oh,
he's
yeah.
seeing it getting worse. So now we're starting to play with his psychosis. He's starting to imagine things that aren't really there. So like, maybe it's
Yeah.
like he sees like the skin is like peeled back, and like maybe even like exposed muscle and shit, and he's like, oh my god, and like he's scooping out the salve with like a shaking hand, and like then we see what it really looks like, and it's just his arm cut up. And then we see when he's putting it on, we see that close up, and like the skin's all peeled, and like it's all fucked up, and he's just like, oh my god, I'm gonna be okay, and he's like just dabbing it gingerly on his arm and like rewrapping his wounds. So we see that Dwayne is not okay. Like
Yeah.
something is going very wrong with him.
Yeah, I think I love this too, and I think that his panic should start to set in here. And I don't know why, but as soon as you had mentioned even a few minutes ago about going to the doctor and getting some medicine, I just immediately started thinking like, oh well, he's gonna like overuse the medicine and like make it worse.
Mhm.
It's like when you put a salve or a burn cream or something on, like you got to leave it alone. You can't just like put on more and more and more and more. And just like anything else, when you have too much of a good thing, it becomes a bad thing. And
Mhm.
I'm just picturing him like he's putting on the salve. And again, in reality, we're seeing him like dab, 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 or I should say in his head, we're seeing him dab, dab, dab. Maybe in reality, he's just like sloppily smearing it all around like Vaseline, and it's
Oh
just,
yeah.
and then he's wrapping it up, and then he's like panicking and pacing back and forth, and he's thinking about it, and he's scratching. Oh shit, I scratched it off. He takes all the bandages off. He puts more of the cream or salve on, and then wraps it up
Mhm.
again, and he's pacing around like, what am I gonna do? And oh, I know, I'll look it up. And then again, like he takes the bandages off and puts the medicine. And it's like he's immediately falling into this cycle where he's like, gotta fix it, gotta fix it, gotta fix it. And so in the
Yeah.
time it takes him to panic, pace back and forth in his living room for 100 paces, and then sit down at the computer and go to like WebMD, he has like put on, removed, and reapplied the bandages and the medicine on his arm like 20 times.
Yes. Dude, I fucking love that. That's perfect. So I think here maybe we should have him like find out about the necrotizing fasciitis. Like maybe he's looking up all this different information online, and we see like it's 9 p.m. Maybe it's even past his bedtime. Like we see every night, he would get in bed at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, and we pan over to the clock, and we see that it's well past when he would normally be in bed, and he's just like sitting in a dark room, like glowing computer screen, looking at it, just clearly reading. Then we pan over and we see that he's reading about the flesh-eating bacteria, and then he's just like panicking, thinking like that's what he has, like it's gonna kill him type of thing. So he looks up, he's looking online, like I said, he's completely off his routine. He's past his bedtime. He's reading about this. He's convincing himself that he has this. And maybe we could do like this montage of like close up on Dwayne's like unblinking, unshaven, like tired face. And then like back to the screen, we see like a close up of like the flesh eating bacteria. And then like, the words on the screen of like, necrotizing fasciitis, blah, blah. And then back at Dwayne, like eyes darting back and forth across the screen, like getting wider and more frightened, looking back down at another like picture of the flesh eating bacteria. And then like a close up of Dwayne scratching at his own arm. And we could see that back and forth of like, here's his arm. Like clearly the cuts are irritated, and they're like slathered with this like white cream that he's been putting on it. But like we see like first scratch, irritated cuts and the white cream, and then a quick flash of like flesh peeling off as he's scratching, like furrows of just like these like deep wounds, like as his nails are dragging across his arm, and then like back to reality where he's just scratching, but he's seeing all this shit happen.
Yeah, there should be a scene where he looks in his reflection in the computer screen, or he sees it in the mirror, but whatever. But yeah, he should definitely like look in the mirror. And we had mentioned he had like a couple of cuts on his face. So one of these cuts, that's a pretty minor cut. He probably doesn't even have a Band-Aid on it, but he's got to look in the mirror. And we're going to see his face with the couple of minor cuts. His eyes are going to grow wide, like, what the fuck? Like, doesn't say it out loud, but like that's the expression his face is making. And then we see from his perspective, he looks in the mirror, and that little cut is instead like half of his forehead is like black with like gangrene and like pus.
Ooh. Oh yeah. Oh, dude. Okay, so here's the perfect way to do that is like, so like you said, he was looking at the screen, and we see him see his reflection, and he focuses. He's like, what is that? And he like jumps up and he like goes to the mirror, and we see, as you said, the audience sees just that cut. But as he like looks at himself in the mirror, then he sees all that, and immediately like grabs his forehead like, oh God, no, it's spreading, and is like freaking out like that whatever this is spreading all over his body. So, yeah. And then maybe we could even do like a hard cut from that, like him holding his forehead, like rocking back and forth to like, boom, Wednesday, 7 a.m. Like that's like the next day.
Yeah. And now instead of waking up in his bed, his nice, neatly made bed he always wakes up in. Maybe he's the guy who like sleeps on his back, like like straight as a board. But instead, he wakes up like leaning against the wall under the window in his living room where he had just passed out the night before because he sat there like rocking and panicking until he literally just like was so exhausted he fell asleep. Now he wakes up, it's 7 a.m. The sun's coming in the window. He's red-eyed and just immediately just jumps right back into the panic. But now it's like he jumps up. Now it's that sense of panic when you wake up of like, you had a nightmare, or you wake up thinking like, oh fuck, what time is it? And it's like he just immediately is on his feet, and he just looks a fucking mess. Blood on his clothes, like he slept in his whatever he was wearing the day before. I don't know why I keep picturing him in like brown pants and a green shirt like Shaggy, but it just fits,
It does, dude. It's funny because as soon as you said green shirt earlier, I immediately pictured brown pants. So
yeah, right.
He looks like Shaggy.
And maybe maybe in the bright light of day, he looks at himself in the mirror. He doesn't see that like huge gangrene patch, and maybe he's like, what? And he blinks his eyes and he looks again and he looks at his arms, and it's like, wait, what's happening? It's like he's sobered up a little bit just from sleeping, and he hasn't spun himself up yet today,
Right.
And maybe in this moment of clarity, he like grabs his jacket and he runs out the door. And every single time we've seen him leave his apartment before this, he stopped at the door, grabbed his keys, put him back, grabbed his keys, put him back. Like it takes him a second because he has to do everything in this like OCD routine. This is the first time we see him grab the keys, barrel through the door. He's on the second floor of this duplex. So of course he's going to go down the stairs out, and there's like there's a front door that with a little small porch or sitting area that's adjacent to Jay's porch. Jay lives in the first floor, so he has more space. Maybe he comes out the door right when we see a car pull up on the curb. Dwayne panics because everything is setting him off at this point. Like nobody pulls up in a car, or maybe it's like a yellow cab, right? Pulls up in a yellow cab on the curb, and we see a woman get out and with like a little girl, like a 7 or 8 year old girl. And that's when we realize that Jay's there, because Jay stands up and he's like, what the fuck, Sandy? Like, this isn't my weekend, and
Yes.
we realize that it's like Sunday, like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and Jay's already on the front porch drinking silver bullets.
Rise and shine.
Exactly. So, and his girlfriend or ex-wife or whoever it is with the girl, she comes up and she's like, I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything about it. I got called in for the double, and Mac told me if I missed another shift he'd fire me, and I can't afford it. So, and it's Sunday, I can't take her to school, like I got to leave her with you. And then I don't want Jay to be a total dick, but maybe he says something like, I would love to take Chrissy more. I've been asking you for more days, but I'm already like a 6-pack in. Like, I don't know that this is a good idea. And then, Sandy, the ex-wife, is just like, nothing I can do about it. Tough. You want to be a daddy? Be a daddy. And she gets in the cab and boom, she's out of there. And Dwayne's just kind of watching this, maybe like half in the screen door, of his little porch, and it's like he's afraid to leave because he's trying to sneak away because he doesn't want them to see the grotesque monster who's coming down from upstairs with like the mummy bandages all over himself, right?
Yes.
And little Chrissy like comes up on the porch with Jay, and of course Jay's like, oh, it's cool, like don't worry about it, like mommy's busy, going to make some money so we can get you some good birthday presents, whatever. He comes up on the porch and he like kicks a pile of like empty Coors Light cans out of the way so he can open the door, and he's like, oh, sorry honey, I didn't get a chance to clean up. And we see Chrissy stop because she sees Dwayne, and then Jay, this exchange of like, oh hey Dwayne, like, man, you feeling all right? And and Dwayne doesn't say anything. He's just like a deer in headlights, like panicked, like, you don't see me, like he's trying to leave. And Jay is just like, man, like, shit, man, you must have been up all night or something, man. You look like hell. You get some sleep. And again, nothing. He's like, all right, well, there's a couple more silver bullets over there if you want to grab one and like, chill out. But, like, come on, Chrissy, let's go get some breakfast. And we see little Chrissy like reach out. And again, it's a horror movie, so you introduce these like sort of silly suspense moments. So she reaches out real slowly with like a pointing finger, and then Dwayne is just like, his eyes get even wider, and he looks at that finger like, oh no, and like, here it comes, and she like pokes him on like the hand, right at the wrist area, like where there's no bandage there, pokes him, and like what we see is she just kind of like pokes or maybe she pokes the bandage, like, oh, like, what is this, a mummy man? But in his head, he looks down and he sees her finger like go a half an inch into his arm, and he's just like, and he fucking screams and like rips the screen door off, trying to get away as fast as he can. Chrissy freaks the fuck out, starts screaming, screeching at the top of her lungs. Jay sweeps her up and is like, what the fuck, Dwayne? And that's the last thing we hear as he like takes off down the street. And then of course we'll deal with Jay being pissed at him later. But I just want to see this little scene of like a little girl sticking her finger in his arm.
Oh, dude, that's so freaky. But yeah, like, okay, so like maybe she's only like 4 years old, like she's young, and like maybe it wasn't school, maybe it would be like daycare or something, but it's not open on Sunday or whatever. Just because I'm picturing like this little girl looking at his arm, being like, oh, you have a boo boo, and like going to like touch it,
yes,
like very innocently, just like kind of pointing at the bandage. But you, like, to your point, Dwayne, what he's seeing is not matching what's happening, and her finger like sinks into his arm, and he's like, don't touch me, like freaks out, scares the shit out of this poor kid. Poor drunk Jay is like, what the fuck, dude? Like, just like loses his shit, and Dwayne like runs off screaming into the morning. like fucking Nicolas Cage and what is it, Kiss of the Vampire, whatever. I'm a vampire, like that freak out running into the streets.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, he should like run past the little like gas station convenience store, and Shelly's in there, and she looks out the window and just sees him running down the street like he's on fire.
Right. So like clearly Dwayne is fucked. Maybe like where he ends up going is like an urgent care. Like, so we see him like, maybe like we see him running, freaking out, this whole panic, and it's like 7 a.m. total freak out, and maybe it's not 7, maybe like, he has a little bit of time in the apartment before he leaves. But to your point, like you said, like he doesn't do his morning routine of like running out the door, or no, of picking up the keys before he runs out the door. Like this time he just runs out the door, just to kind of like set it a little bit later in the morning, make a little more sense why Jay's already drunk, like, hey, it's noon somewhere type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, like, he's a construction worker on his day off. He's not getting up before 10 a.m. There's no way.
No. So like we see Dwayne like go running past the convenience store, and again, to your point, Shelley sees him and is like, Dwayne, like, looks confused. Maybe she's cashing somebody out, and then it's like boom, 1 p.m. and we see him sitting in a waiting room, like rocking back and forth, like picking at his fingers, like picking at his nails, just like clearly fucking freaked. And eventually, sees a doctor and tries to tell him, like, I think I have the necrotizing fasciitis. I think I have flesh-eating bacteria. He's like, my skin's coming off, and he's like panicking. And they look at him and they're like, you're fine. You just have a few cuts. Like, yeah, they're irritated. You can't be poking at him. You got to leave him, bandage. Like maybe his bandages aren't even on all the way at this point. Like he's been picking at him, and they're talking to him, and maybe they even try to like suggest, therapy, or suggest like, an anxiety medication or something, like, because he's clearly having a very hard time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they should definitely say something to him, like, let's make it clear that they're not infected. At some point he's going to look and be like, look, it's turning black right here. And then have the doctor or the nurse practitioner or whoever's there, to give him the diagnosis, to say, yeah, they're really irritated, and you really need to stop scratching them. But, the skin looks healthy. Nothing is giving me any indication that these are really infected. But, they're going to be if you don't leave them alone. You got to use the medication and the bandages the right way. And here I can have, Terry here, like, show you the right way to do it, so you can replace the bandages at home. And of course he's not listening, and he's just like waiting for her to stop talking, so he can be like, no, you don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
But I want to make a point to say they're not infected. Like, the audience will know that.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, actually. So yeah, like, just like exactly what you said there. She tries to explain to him that it's not infected, but it will be if you don't leave it alone. But Dwayne, like, maybe this whole time she's talking, like, we're doing, I'm picturing this scene where it's like close up on Dwayne's eyes darting back and forth, like, around the room. So like, we see the doctor, like a close up of the doctor talking, like, you're gonna be fine. And then like a close up to maybe like there's one of those, like, the hang in there baby posters, like, of the kitten hanging on the, like, he'll see that and then like look around the room again, and then like down at his arm, and we see it like festering and bubbling, and like maybe there's like, he sees like fucking maggots in the wound or something. Yes. He's just like freaking out.
I was just going to say there should be like a maggot or a botfly or something ridiculous at this point, where it's just, it's escalating from just being like grosser to blacker to sloughing off to now it's like infested.
Yes. And he's just like, he's rocking back and forth. And again, the doctor, maybe like he's hearing her talking, and that'll just turn into like a kind of like droning buzz. And like he's looking around the room, and then we hear Dwayne's breath like louder and louder and louder and louder, and then finally snaps back to her being like, and I'm gonna write you a prescription for, and I don't know, pick whatever anxiety medication you want to pick here, like basically telling him that he needs to calm down, he needs to relax, he's working himself up, and he will not get better if he keeps doing this. So just like the doctor clearly has his best interests at heart, but he's just like losing his shit. So yeah, like we see Dwayne leaving the urgent care, like holding the script, like in a daze, and like I love this idea of transitioning back and forth between, like, we see Dwayne walking, we hear like cars honking, like the hustle and bustle of like, that section of the city where there's, the business area. We see him like walking back toward his house, and then like, so all this noise, and then the quiet buzz, and then back to the noise, and then the quiet buzz. Like, so we're seeing that duality between Dwayne's world and what's actually happening. And that's funny, Dwayne's world, because Wayne's World.
Dwayne's world, pie time, skin your arms. I'm gonna edit that out.
But yeah, so at some point, Dwayne is gonna fully snap. Like he is going to come to some drastic conclusions. And I think, this is a part where we kind of have to start winding toward the inevitable end of this story. So what I kind of want to have Dwayne do is get to a point where he believes that medicine isn't going to help him. These doctors aren't going to help him. No one knows what they're talking about. Everyone seems to think it's fine that he's literally rotting. And like maybe he could even be saying this stuff to himself, like he's rocking back and forth, like why does everyone think I'm going to be okay? Like my skin is rotting, my skin's falling off. Like he's like just freaking out, and then maybe he comes to the conclusion of like, I need new skin. I need new skin.
I knew there was more to this idea than what you were saying before.
Of course, there has to be. There's got to be that hook. So now Dwayne is going to decide to do something very bad. He's gonna need someone else's skin because his own is not doing so hot. But I mean, you can't use dead skin, right? So it's not like he can go and dig up a corpse or rob a morgue. Like it's got to be living skin. It's got to be fresh skin. It's got to be healthy skin. So.
Oh, real quick, before we get any further, I don't want to get away from it. You were talking about like Dwayne having like talking to himself, which in and of itself is new behavior that we haven't seen yet in the story, which of course we're seeing him break all of his weird routines. But for some reason, I'm picturing him leaving this urgent care clinic or wherever he was, and it's getting dark, and to the point where it's been so long that, what's her name, Shelley? It's been so long that Shelley's shift is over now, and have him just be running back down the street like he's going home, and she's coming out and like bumps into him again, and again she's like, oh, and now I can flirt with him, I'm off of work, and but even now she's like, oh, hey Dwayne, oh, what and like she immediately recognizes that there is something really, really wrong with him. And every single time that we've seen Dwayne interact with Shelley before, he's been nervous and tongue-tied, didn't want to speak to her. He probably does like her back, but doesn't know how to express that. But this time he just walks right up to her and grabs her, and have her get startled because he just grabs her by like the upper arms, and she's just like panicked and like, what the hell? And he just goes up to her real close, and he's just like, my skin, it's coming off. It's coming off. I don't know what to do about it. And that whole thing you said that he says to himself, and instead of saying it to himself, have him say it to Shelley, and she's just like,
fuck,
what the fuck? And he's like, I need new skin, right? It makes sense, right? I need new skin. And she doesn't even know how to say. She's just like, oh my God, this guy that I thought was cute is a raving fucking lunatic.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, no, I dig that.
And maybe let's end this with have him look around, and like he's look like, where do I get new skin? And he looks around and he sees like the dumpster area or the alleyway where that dumpster was, and he's just like it's like he gets an idea, like let me return to the scene of the crime or something, and he takes off. And that's probably the last time that we're going to see Shelley in this story, but we're going to leave her just staring after him like, boy, I sure can't pick him, huh?
I love that though, that he says it to her, because that also kind of would give us a hook if we wanted Dwayne to get caught, because it's like, you can't say something like that to somebody and then have some bad shit happen and not have someone talk to the police.
Exactly.
So yeah, so he does his, he does this whole freak out, and like you said, does the whole thing of like, I need new skin. That makes sense, right? That makes sense. Like he's trying to convince himself as much as like he doesn't even really know she's there. She's just like a sounding board at this point to him. And then like he runs off to the alleyway. Maybe she like pulls her coat around. She's like, Jesus Christ, and like gets the hell out of there. But we see Dwayne like walking around in the alleyway, looking around, and then maybe he sees this, relatively abandoned, because it's an abandoned area of the neighborhood. We see this garage that's kind of like half open, bunch of junk in there, and he goes inside and looks around, and then we see him kind of like smiling to himself, and then boom, cut to the next day. So okay. It's like 7 a.m. The alarm goes off. Dwayne doesn't get up out of bed. He's laying there. He's just staring at the ceiling, and he's thinking to himself. And then it's like, we, go 9 a.m. and normally he'd be sitting at his computer, but he's not. Maybe he's sitting on the edge of the bed or sitting against the wall. Like we see his entire routine is gone. Like everything is wrong for Dwayne now. Like his whole worldview has been shattered. what I'm picturing him doing is going and buying a few items. Maybe he goes online. Maybe he goes to he probably go to a convenience store or go to some store. So yeah, we'll have him go to the pharmacy. He'll get like rubbing alcohol and gauze and stuff like that. And then we see him getting, like needle and thread. He's buying a bunch of things that are not going to be used for anything good.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Again, I have to do it one more time. I've done it a few times before. Like, stop, hang on, before we get too far. Have him, when he leaves his apartment this time, instead of just cutting from like him in the apartment to like the store, let's have him leave. Because again, I feel like showing the routine over and over and over again is not just for Dwayne, but it's the storytelling tick that we're using in this movie or whatever it is, right? That it's like we are also having these routines. So we're seeing him wake up and do his shit and leave the apartment like over and over and over again. And this time when he leaves the apartment, now the last time he left, he scared the shit out of a 4-year-old girl, right? So this time when he leaves, he closes this door, and then we see Jay and like two of his boys like jump up from where they were sitting on the porch, and they're not drinking this time. They were waiting for him to come down, and have Jay jump up and be like, yo, what the fuck? Like, Chrissy told my ex-wife that you freaked out and scared the shit out of her, and now she won't bring her around here anymore. I had one day, to see her, and now she's telling me that it's too dangerous in this neighborhood, motherfucker. And he pushes Dwayne, and his boys they kind of they square up on either side of him, and there's three of them like staring at Dwayne, and then have Dwayne just look at him and be like, nah, too big. And he just turns and walks away like they're not even there. Like he just ignores them completely. And at this point, I think Jay, he probably should chase him or something, but maybe he immediately sees the fucking mania in Dwayne's eyes. Like he's totally transformed from the like nebbish, little ball of fear that he's used to. And, and all Jay can really do is be like, yeah, man, yeah, get out of here. I don't want to see you around here anymore, man. Get the fuck out of here. It's like he immediately realizes that maybe I shouldn't screw with the complete psychopath that I saw in that guy's eyes. So we're just going to let him walk away,
Yeah, no, I like that. So like you said, like they square up on him. I like the idea of like one of them maybe grabbing him by the shirt collar and having Dwayne just look at his forearm. Maybe he like puts his hand on the guy's forearm and he does the whole like, no, too big. Like you said, like almost like uncomfortably touching this guy. This guy clearly wants to kick your ass and you're just like, no, not good enough.
He's gonna pull his arm back like he just like touched a fire, like, oh shit.
And then and we could have Jay, and to your point, like of him realizing something's wrong, he could look at Dwayne and see like, okay, he's still wearing the same clothes that I saw him in last time. There's blood, like dried blood on his shirt. Like he's got like a half bandaged arm, and he's like, his eyes are darting around. He's looking and he's like, yeah, go on, get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't want to see you around here no more. And like, as Dwayne's like walking around him and be like, dude, that guy, there's something fucking wrong with that guy. Just like some kind of comment of just like, okay, I don't want to open that can of worms.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like with Shelley, we could see Jay again, but if we didn't, and this was the last thing we saw of him, like he's fulfilled his purpose, right? Because again, acting as the proxy for the audience, he's just like making it really obvious that Dwayne has just lost it. He's turned a corner into some kind of psychosis, and Jay and his boys are just they don't want to mess with that.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I feel like everybody has encountered an individual like that at one point or another where you're like, I wouldn't want to fight that guy. Like there's something that I feel like they would definitely hurt me. and Dwayne in that state of mind, he'd probably hurt you.
Yeah, I think we've all met some like squirrely, skinny little dude at one point in our lives and thought, nah, that dude's gonna murder somebody. Like that dude's gonna kill me if I do something to him. Because you meet certain people and it's like they feel like a coiled spring.
Yes. And that's so fucking accurate. I've met some very nice people that are like that, but you just don't push them because they're it's like a short fuse type of thing. And Dwayne in this situation, I think there's no fuse left. Like if he's pushed the wrong way, he's gonna hurt you.
Yeah. I think it's kind of ironic too that he was so trapped in these routines that were like getting him through his normal life that now that he's just let himself be crazy, it's like he's freed from all of that. He doesn't have to do the OCD shit. He doesn't
Yep,
have to, he can leave his house. Like he can talk to people. It's like he's freed, but he just had to go crazy first.
exactly. He just had to break down everything. But yeah, so we see him go and he buys, like we could see, like we could do the little 80s montage of like the gearing up montage that we see in all the Schwarzenegger films.
Absolutely.
Only this time it's gauze, cotton balls, alcohol, like a tarp, sewing needle and thread, all that kind of stuff. And then we could see him. Okay.
I'm sorry. There's got to be that scene where like the montage music just stops abruptly for a second, and he's at like the Ace Hardware or something, and the guy at the cash register is checking him out, and it's like a 2-gallon jug of like I don't know paint thinner, and then there's like a big hammer and the tarp and like rubber gloves and like one of those like safety masks you wear when you paint. It's like all this stuff, and then have him be like a little DIY project next weekend. It's like,
Yes.
and then like cut right back into the music.
That's amazing. Like boop, boop. Got a project going, do you? Boop, boop. And then gotta have a montage.
Montage.
Oh my god. So yeah, so he gets, we clearly he has nefarious plans. And then like we see him maybe like in the garage, like cleaning, like obsessively cleaning it, like scrubbing it, and just like eyes wide and manic, just scrubbing the floors, scrubbing the walls, like replacing the light bulbs. Like he's doing something in there. And then again do that hard cut we've been doing where it's like like Thursday, but maybe it's like 8 p.m. and we see Dwayne standing outside the convenience store, just kind of standing there looking around. Like he goes inside, maybe Shelly looks at him and is like, okay, like doesn't say nothing to him. He buys a few things and he's waiting around. And eventually we see the same guy coming down the street, like coming toward the convenience store. And Dwayne like kind of looks at him, he's holding his bag of goods, and maybe he walks by him and like purposely like shoulder checks him. Like again, something Dwayne would not do.
You mean the guy who mugged him earlier?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, keep going.
So like he was waiting for that, like he was looking for that guy, Hell,
okay. Yeah.
maybe we could even do like we could see a new routine. Like maybe he's going there every night of the week, doing the same thing, buying a bag of goods, waiting around, looking around, and then we see him back at home. And like we just see like the piles, like maybe he's just like buying like chips and soda and gum and random shit. And we just see like his kitchen table with more and more bags of crap sitting on. Like he doesn't even care what he's buying. He's just all it is bait. He's doing this on purpose.
No, sorry, I'm getting all excited and like interrupting you, but yeah, like there should be little pints of ice cream that are just melting in puddles all over. And I love it too because again, earlier on when he had that routine, he was eating ice cream every night. Also, his apartment was like really clean and really neat. And now he's letting his kitchen turn into like a hoarder house, like full of snacks from the gas station, and he's not eating the ice cream and it's just like melting all over the place. And again, to make the scene even more uncomfortable and disgusting, like now there's flies and buzzing all around, and I love this idea that we're going to start replacing the background or the absence of a background noise, because we talked earlier that this neighborhood was really quiet, right? And that's why Dwayne liked it, because it was quiet. And now it's not quiet because there's this constant buzz of like insects in his apartment, but he doesn't care.
It's so freaky. But yeah, it's like I'm almost picturing like the scene in in Hellraiser 1 where they're going through the house and like they go in the kitchen and you see like the maggots and shit on the old meat on the counter, and like you hear the buzzing and the crinkling and of the maggots moving around. It's like that's kind of what I'm picturing in Dwayne's kitchen now. It's just getting dirtier and dirtier.
And we have to do those zoom, like those like snap zooms like we did earlier when we showed his arm and the scratching, where we just suddenly, cut to these like super zoomed in shots. And now we're going to zoom way in and see, maggots like squirming around on top of, like Hostess cupcakes or something. And it's just going to be real gross.
Absolutely. Because again, you can't have body horror without grossing everybody out. So like we night after night, we see this new routine. And then eventually, like he's standing there and we see the guy who mugged him at the start of the movie, like coming down the street toward him. So Dwayne looks at him, sees how this is the guy, takes his bag, starts walking right toward him, like in the direction toward the alleyway, and fucking shoulder checks him and have the guy be like, what the fuck? And then look down and see the bag and remember Dwayne and be like, oh, this fucking guy. Like, all right. So he starts following behind him, and then like maybe he, Dwayne gets almost to the alley and like runs into the alley. The guy's like, what the fuck? And like goes to chase after him, turns the corner, and Dwayne fucking Cole cocks him with the hammer that he bought.
Oh, just shit.
Boom, right across the fucking jaw. Like very visceral, like where you see the impact, like a tooth comes out, blood everywhere. Oh. Guy goes down, and it's like, what the fuck? And like looks up, and then we just see Dwayne standing over him, unblinking, holding the hammer with blood on it, bring it up and come down again, black screen.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah. It's funny. We're doing two episodes in a row where we're smashing people with hammers.
I know, right? Because there's something about getting hit with a hammer. This is like, God. Like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's one of the most horrifying moments in the entire franchise when Leatherface beats the guy in the head with the meat tenderizer. Like when he just fucking hits him and like dude hits the ground and like his legs start switching. It's like, fuck, stop.
All I can think is that the Foley artist is going to have a fucking field day with this movie, man.
God, yeah.
Because you mentioned meat tenderizer, and I'm just thinking like, dude, that Foley artist is going to, he's going to buy like a big, like, bone-in pork butt or something and just start smashing the shit out of it. And you're going to be hearing these like wet smacking noises with like a little crunch in there every once in a while. And
and like all the glass earlier and the like buzzing. Oh yeah.
And
this
like
would be a Foley artist's dream.
He'll get a big bowl of fettuccine Alfredo and just like swirl it around. You hear that like squelching wet noise of like the skin that Dwayne thinks is coming off of his arms. Like grossing myself out.
I know, it's so nasty. But yeah, so we see, and now it's gonna be like a POV shot. Like we see well, first we see the dude wake up like close up. His face is all fucking black and blue and swollen and bloody. And he opens one eye. He's like, whoa, what the fuck happened? And then like we see his point of view, and we just see Dwayne with his back to him, and he's sharpening something. And we hear the like the shh of the, we see like the motions of his arms. And like he turns around and looks at the guy, and he's got the like one of those like vinyl-y aprons on. he's holding a very sharp looking knife. And Dwayne just starts calmly talking to him. Maybe the guy's like, what the fuck? What are you doing? What do you want with me? And Evan be like, well, since you were the one that made me get infected, I feel like it's only right that you're the one that helps me heal. Just kind of just
nice.
Like in this like just fucking daze, and have him be like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you see, I need new skin. That's and it has to be live skin. I know this is going to hurt, and I'm really sorry for that. I don't want to hurt anybody, but it has to be alive. You understand that, right? Like if I use dead skin, it won't work. It has to be living skin. So unfortunately, you have to be awake for this. I'm so sorry. I don't want to do this, but I have to. Like just like this pleading and like this very calm, and have him like come up to the guy. We'll just call him Robert. Robert the robber. He just takes like this wad of like, maybe it's like an old rag or something, and like shoves it in the guy's mouth and duct tapes around it. And he's just looking at the guy, and he's like, I need to see your arm. And he just like grabs the guy by the arm, and we see him just start to make no hesitation, just start cutting around his forearm, and like basically just fucking degloves his arm. Like just pulls the right, and then have him like quickly take the skin over to like a little station where he's got like the rubbing alcohol. It's like, and he's cleaning it, and the guy's like muffled screams through the soccer rag and the duct tape, just like freaking out. We see like blood pouring off of his now skinned arm, and Dwayne's clean. He's like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll be okay. Don't worry. Like almost
Yeah,
like the guy, like the
I'll
guy's
be
worried
fine.
about him. Yeah.
Yeah, de-glove is one of those words like moist that just
I
you
know,
can like
right?
feel it and hear it. It's stop it.
It's like everything about it is not okay. But yeah, so we see like maybe he like comes back and like does it to the other arm, like skins that on the guy's screen. The guy eventually passes out, because too much fucking pain, clearly.
Yeah.
And then we see Dwayne like cleaning it real good, and then like taking surgical scissors and like precision cutting, the skin, making it so he can use it. And then we see him take the knife to himself and start
Ugh.
cutting his own flesh and peeling it back. And again, not even flinching, just like maybe his hand is shaking and he's breathing heavy. Like we just hear like the sound of him like just like breathing heavy as he's working, but he doesn't say nothing. Like there's the squelching sounds and the heavy breathing, and he's peeling the skin back, and then he like lays the wet, fresh skin over his and begins sewing it on.
Oh,
it's like,
God.
Like, isn't it fucking disgusting?
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fucked up. No, I love it. And of course, we have to see every second of this.
Of course.
We're only going to cut away here and there so that we don't have this movie take like 6 hours or however long it takes him to like completely flay this guy. But yeah, like there's not going to be any cutting away where the instrument goes down and then you see the blood splatter on the wall. Like no, none of that. Like every time Dwayne does something, we're going to see what Dwayne is doing.
We're going to see the peeling and the sewing and all. But yeah, so like at the end of it, he's standing there and he's got like his arms are all swollen and just disgusting looking, and they're all like irritated and bloody from like he's sewing himself with like literally a needle and thread. Like it's fucked up stitches, and he's like looking down at his arms and like maybe his whole body is shaking from the adrenaline rush, and we look over at the robber and he's like laying there passed out, still breathing. And then maybe Dwayne just leaves him like that.
Oh, God.
Like
yes,
imagine how fucked up that, and like he looks down at the guy and maybe just says something like, I think I'll be fine, and climbs out of the garage and just leaves him to die there. Now I don't really have an end in mind. Maybe we see something like, Dwayne at his house, like the next day, or at his apartment, do the 7 a.m. and maybe his routine starts. Like his normal routine goes back. Like he wakes up, he brushes his teeth, he puts his toothpaste in and he's doing that. And maybe that could be juxtaposed with like, a homeless guy finding the body or something. And then like the cops investigating, and back to Dwayne, like typing away. We hear the sirens in the distance and all that. And he's just, happily doing his routine. And then like black screen.
Oh, okay. I love that, but I can't help but want to add something. I'm sorry.
Go for it. Oh, no, dude, go for it.
So I love all of that, but I want to add one more scene at the end before the black screen. And also, let's demonstrate that his routine is healthy now. He's still getting up at the same time. He's getting up, he's brushing his teeth, his slippers and his robe are all like, arranged just so, and his breakfast is just so, whatever. But we don't see him repeat anything. He's not, counting the strokes of the deodorant, or he's not like, obsessively straightening the, sliced strawberries on his breakfast plate, or whatever it is. Like he just does everything one time and he's just happily going about his morning. Like the anxiety is gone from the routine. And then he goes through his whole morning, like he goes to work for a little while, and then he gets up and it's like lunchtime, and maybe he like opens the window and takes a breath of fresh air and hears the birds, and he goes and he grabs his keys again, just that one time, grabs his keys, goes outside, and like this whole time, like we're seeing him do this, but we're not really getting a good look at his face, we're seeing him, maybe we see his hands and they're like a little like puffy and weird looking, and he steps out on his porch and Jay's sitting there, and Jay, he doesn't jump up to confront him like before, but Jay just looks over at him and, maybe he's just like, Dwayne, man, what the fuck's wrong with you? And then we see Dwayne turn full face to the camera, broad daylight. We see exactly what his new face looks like. And he looks at Jay and he says, me? Why, I'm fine. Black screen.
Oh, God, yes. And we could even hear the sirens in the background and shit.
Yeah, the sirens in the background. That's perfect.
Oh, dude. Okay, this came out way better than I expected. I am very happy with this. My notes were kind of comprehensive, at least of like the beats of his infection and stuff like that. But I didn't really have a story. I just had the hook. So I'm really glad we were able to work all this out, because it turned into something way better than I was originally planning. So I like this. This is fun.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that it harkens back to our Vengabus of Death and Hot Garbage two-parter. Because the whole time we were doing this, I kept thinking of the same kind of like dirty, sweaty, rundown cityscape that we did in Hot Garbage, where the atmosphere, the mood was so much a part of the story, like a character in the story. And this was the same kind of a thing. It's a different city, different characters, but it was the same kind of setting where it's this sort of like, downtrodden guy in a depressed area. And it just lends itself to something being wrong. And I think it's funny too, because when we did that two-parter, it was like, the Vengabus of Death was great, and then when we did Hot Garbage, it was like, fuck, man, I gotta like up my game to like compete with that. And then like just now we did like Never Kill the Dog, which I think it's one of my favorite ideas, and it's a good idea. Yeah. We had a lot of fun with it, and then we come back and do this one, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, dude. It was like it just met the bar that was already set, and I love that these two stories go together, I think, in just the same way that those other two stories went together. So I hope that people are digging them as much as I did, because I'm just sitting here going, fuck yeah, dude. Like, I don't know where this came from, but this is amazing.
I completely agree. Like, and this is one of those stories where, like I said, normally I have, as you know, I normally have too many notes when I bring to the table, and then I have to decide what I'm cutting out and what I'm not. And this one, I didn't have any of that. So I was really hoping that we would be able to work out the details of the story, because in my head, I only had the one character. So I'm like, oh fuck, I knew there's got to be more. And so you brought a lot of that to the table, and I was like, oh thank God, okay, now there's some direction we can go with.
Yeah.
to get Dwayne to where he needs to be,
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, a lot of it just came down to like, let's put some other people in his life that he can bounce off of. That's why I wanted to introduce the neighbor and like the clerk at the store or whatever, even the Jay's daughter. It's just having interactions with other people gives the character something to do. It gives us some level of conflict, even when that isn't a large part of the story. It's like it helps to think, well, what would Dwayne do in this scenario? And then that just gets the ball rolling toward, okay, well, if that's how it is, if that's the rule, then this must be true, and this must be true, and this must be true. And yeah, I think that's one of the easiest ways to kind of work into a story you're not sure what to do with, is like, we'll just bounce the character off of somebody and see what happens.
Right. And I think with adding in the whole OCD aspect of the character kind of really helped to cinch the idea behind this guy, because like originally I was just kind of picturing like this quiet, meek, not really shut in, but just kind of a loner, but adding that OCD element, it's like, okay, everything is now gelling well, where it's like we see the struggles he's already facing and why he's such a loner, because he deals with all of this struggle daily, so and then that kind of lends itself to when he went through this traumatic experience, he now is kind of snapping further because he already puts so much stress on himself. I'm actually really happy with this. We've never done a body horror story, so this is new.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm stoked that you brought a body horror story to the table too, because like, to your point, we haven't done one yet. And I'm kind of wondering why, like, how did we never do that before? We've done multiple slashers and lots of other horror situations, but we never just focused on like one character and in this way that we did with Dwayne. So I think the closest probably was Gus from Hot Garbage, where we got to see, his very uncomfortable and unpleasant life, go to shit. Mm-hmm. But that happened from like an external source, and then this one was completely inside Dwayne's head. And I think it's cool too that I mentioned that we have two stories in a row where somebody gets like smashed in the head with a hammer, but also two stories in a row where the main character is like hallucinating through the whole movie.
Yeah,
so that's kind of interesting.
I didn't even put that together, but you're right. Huh.
Yeah, I think these stories work better together than I think that we realized. Like we didn't
Yeah.
plan obviously on putting them together. You had no idea what I wanted to do, and other than some vague recollection of a story idea I told you years ago, and I had no idea what you wanted to do. When you mentioned the title, I was like, oh
Skin
yeah,
Dust.
Skin Deep. I remember you had mentioned something about wanting to do some kind of like a body horror story at one point, but like I have
Mhm.
such a vague memory, and the title was literally all I had. So as we were getting into this, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I see where this came from. But yeah, I'm stoked on it.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like you'd mentioned, that these two going together. Well, it's kind of like the last time I didn't realize how well the Vangabus of horror or Vangabus of death was gonna work with, with hot garbage, because, like, again, both of them were supernatural external forces, completely fucking up somebody's life. So it's like, that's kind of fun that these work together in the same way. So now the question is, I know there is plans on the table to do a sequel to Vengabus. Is there a way we could bring back hot garbage?
I, I think maybe we mentioned it in the last episode, and I was like, yeah, I had a silly idea that we can maybe, maybe do something like you had mentioned doing like a prequel, like an origin story, which
Yes.
at the time I was kind of dismissive of, like, yeah, it's silly in the way that I had mentioned, of course we need to do a remake or a prequel or a requel or something, or it wouldn't like fit the tone of the era. But
Right.
the more I think about it, the more I love the idea of doing an origin story, because it is such a stupid idea.
Right.
But
I keep thinking where the fuck it would come from, and it's like I know we talked about the occult bookstore, like throwing out all the books into the dumpster, but it's like, what if that started before that?
mhm.
Like, what if there was something else?
Yeah, there really are a lot of possibilities there. We could go in a lot of different directions, and I'm thinking of a bunch of like what ifs, what if this, what if that. So I definitely think we could do it. We probably should do it at some point. But yeah, like I
Oh yeah.
said, for me, it's just such a bad idea that I want to do it. It's a challenge, you know?
Hmm. Well, I mean, shit, that was like the first time around, because, like, the Vangabus, like I said, that was something I came up with while I was high and misremembering lyrics, so it's like that was literally the entire birth of that story, and you looked at a meme and went, I got it. Like, so.
Yeah,
Oh.
sometimes these ideas are strange. Well, like you were saying, you were just looking around your office at work, like, fuck, I need an
Yep.
idea for the podcast. In case of emergency, break glass. Break glass. What does that do? I don't know. Fuck. But
Glass
like,
cuts. Ooh, glass cuts suck.
I mean, sometimes those are the best ideas. I didn't mention it
Yeah.
earlier, but man, fuck yeah, dude. I got a piece of glass stuck in my foot recently, and it was one of those ones where it was like so small. It was like smaller than a grain of sand, where, a glass
Hmm.
had broken into kitchen. And like a week later, I was like, man, why is my foot so itchy right here? And eventually I realized that what had happened, there was like this tiny little speck of glass that had been missed. And all the times we'd swept the floor since then, it had somehow been missed. Like it was probably in the carpet or something. And yeah, I got it in my foot, and it was probably 2 days before I realized, though, oh, this
Yep.
isn't just itchy, because I was putting like hydrocortisone cream on it, because I do sometimes get weird like allergy rashes. But I'm like, no. And then, so just like I would have to do with a sliver, I had to like go in my foot with like a needle and try to like pick this tiny little speck of glass out. Ugh, it sucked.
I actually had that happen when I want to say like 12 or 13. I know I was still living at the house over on Third Avenue, and I had gotten a piece of glass stuck in my hand. So
Mm,
little tiny speck, and it was like right in the, like the meat of your palm around your thumb. Like, I don't know
ugh.
what that part of the hand is called, but it was just, it's little tiny, and like I got it stuck in there. I pulled it out. Apparently there was a little piece left behind. And yeah, that fucking sucked because it hurt for days. And eventually, I was picking at it, and I got the little piece out. But it's like, that fucking sucked. So, and anyone who's had that experience of getting a piece of glass or gravel or some kind of thing stuck under their skin knows how irritating that is. Like some kind of little splinter. Like
Mhm.
I've had wood splinters before, and I had one in my foot, I had one in my fucking finger, that it like took days to get the fucking thing out. And it's like, just that whole time it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like when they go like up underneath your fingernail.
Yeah. Oh God, I fucking hate that.
Just adding more body horror to the episode.
Dude, I fucking bent my fingernail back not too long ago. It hurt so fucking bad. Like I just grabbed my bag wrong. And my book bag that I take to work with me is filled with way too much stuff. It's way too fucking heavy. And I grabbed it wrong and just I hadn't had a chance to cut my nails yet. And like it was just a little too long, like not long, but just long enough where putting the pressure on it like bent my nail like over the meat of my finger and cut me. And yeah, it fucking sucked. Like it hurt. I was like for the next like day or so, I was like, what the fuck? It's driving me crazy. You know, it's healing up now, but still.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I am notorious for doing dumb stuff like that. Like I'll go grab something like a dog toy when I'm playing with the dogs, and I'll grab it too fast, and like I'll end up like scratching the floor and like bending my nail back. It's like, oh God, like
yep,
bad depth perception or something. I don't know. Hey, if you don't mind, I want to add one more detail to the story before we completely wrap up Skin Deep, which is I thought of this while you were explaining the whole climax with him skinning the mugger and doing all that. I didn't want to interrupt because I was like, oh, this is creepy. I'm like eating popcorn. I want to hear where this is going, you know? And, but I thought of something, which is I was asking myself, like any good writer should, wait a second, why? Like, there's a plot hole here. Like, why does he know this information? How does he know how to skin a guy or cut the skin in just the right way? Like, where does he get this information from? And of course, again, anytime you write a story, you got to be asking yourselves why. You have to be your worst critic and try to poke holes in everything. And I'm sure people poke holes in our stories all the time. But and so it occurred to me that we could use that as a way to make the story also a little bit more interesting, because we didn't define what Dwayne's job was. We just said he worked from home, and I had said maybe he's an engineer or something that allows him to work from home and not really interact with people. But what if instead he is a digital medical illustrator? So when we see him working, he has one of these like big like Cintiq or iPad type screens, a big screen that he's drawing on with like a stylus. And so when we see him drawing, he has this real big screen. Maybe it's like up at an angle like a drawing board, and he's drawing like, you know, muscles and veins, you know, like dissected body parts or like a cross section of a limb or something. And so every time we see him working throughout all these montage scenes, we're seeing him do this just to give the information to the audience that he knows about the human body. And it's just an extra little level of body horror, because every time we see this routine over and over and over and over again in the movie, as we repeat the montage and, you know, kind of have an OCD to our cinematography, we're going to be constantly showing the audience, you know, blood and veins and muscles and, you know, skulls and like a dissected eyeball or whatever. And I think it would just make everything just a little bit more creepy.
100% agree. That is a perfect addition. Because I didn't even really think about what his job would be. Just like, hey, he works from home. You know, it's like he's got one of those jobs that I kind of wish I had.
Yeah, exactly. I work from home, and it's there's lots of benefits to it. I will not complain, but there's also there's downsides as well. But
of course,
one of the main downsides being like making yourself sit at your desk all day doing your like boring day job when like the couch is right there, the refrigerator is right there. You know, my bed is not that far away.
Yeah, and see that's one of the reasons why I have never taken the plunge. As many times as I've looked at other jobs, it's one of those things where I'm like, all right, I already know what kind of self-motivator I am when I have to do art projects, where I'm like, especially if it's a project I don't want to do, where it's like I'll procrastinate and then be like, all right, fuck it, time to buckle down. And then like I'll buckle down hardcore and, you know, we'll do nothing but until I'm done. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want my day-to-day job to be like that. And I know how I am. So it's probably better that I go punch a clock at a location.
Yeah.
You know?
I miss working in an office for certain things. I miss like the social aspect of it. Not that I want to like chit chat with people all day, but I just like interacting with other human beings, you know, and just getting out of my house and seeing what's going on in the city and in my neighborhood, and like, you know, eating at restaurants on my lunch break, just kind of living where I live and experiencing the place where I live rather than being in my same building. There are times I realize I haven't left my house for like 2 days because I didn't have any reason to go anywhere. And I work here, I live here, eat and sleep here, and my kids ride their bikes to school when the weather's nice. So why do I need to go somewhere? And it's
Exactly.
it's better for my mental health to like just get out of here every once in a while. But it also is really nice when I can sleep until literally 5 minutes before I have to be on my first like meeting of the day, because I can just roll in and put my hat on to cover my bed head and turn the camera on and be like, all right, what are we doing today?
See, that is an aspect I would like, because as we've discussed many, many times on several different podcasts, I'm always tired. It's the hard part about working nights. You're always fucking tired.
But anyway, Mike, I appreciate you bringing the idea to the table and filling in the second half of our trigger warning twin bill 2-part special. I really like doing these original improvs, and I really like doing the 2-part specials, because then we both get to bring something cool to the spotlight. I think that they're a lot of fun, and I just like coming up with like fun titles.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think more of these. I mean, hopefully we get good feedback. We got a lot of good feedback on our double feature last year. Hopefully we get some good feedback on these too, because if you guys like them, we love doing them. So I absolutely would love to do more like this. The themed 2-parters.
Absolutely, yeah. And as we're recording this, Never Killed a Dog hasn't been out for that long, so I haven't really seen the feedback yet, and I'm really, really curious. I'm like sadistically curious to know if we upset anyone with all the dogs we killed.
Yep.
But now, of course, I'm interested to hear how many people are going to get like the goosebump willies when they're driving, listening to the story, on the podcast. And like, they're going to have like a full body shudder while they're trying to get to work.
Well, I mean, considering both of us were doing that while telling the story, I'm pretty sure there'll at least be a couple.
Yeah. I can picture in my head a couple of our listeners who would definitely do that. They're going to definitely respond to the body horror. So we'll see. But in the meantime, you can check us out at raisedbyrentals.com, at raisedbyrentals on the social medias, and also visit radpantheon.com or at radpantheon to check out all the other podcasters, artists, musicians, all kinds of creative friends that we have joined a super team with to help spread the word about all that rad stuff. And Mike, you're a part of the Rad Pantheon. What do you have going on?
Right now, Boogeyman's Closet is still on hiatus. We did put out our anniversary special. Unfortunately, as I had stated many times before, I have a lot of projects going on at the moment that I unfortunately could not devote the time that I wanted to when I took time off from Boogeyman's Closet, just because work has been absolutely batshit insane. I've been working extra hours, so I'm trying to scramble now to get everything done. We're hoping that the Boogeyman's Closet will be back at least by August. I'm shooting for July, but I'm not hopeful at the moment. But in the meantime, I'm also still doing Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash, where 3 grown man children talk about toys and pop culture. But our buddy Josh is going to be going on hiatus for a little while, but we're going to have some guests filling in while he's gone, because he just bought a house. Again, congratulations to him and Ruth. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful place. I'm very happy for the two of them. So we're excited to have him back, but totally understand the hiatus there. And then, but speaking of Josh, we also have recorded our new podcast, Member Berries and Munchies, which is finally up on Podbean and Spotify. It's not up on Apple yet. I had a little bit of trouble submitting it through Podbean to Apple. I got to figure out what the hell went wrong, but that hopefully I'll fix that in the next week or so. But it is up to listen on Podbean and Spotify. Our first 2 episodes are out. I am editing the 3rd. Hopefully that'll be out soon. We have about 4 episodes in the can. So hopefully by the time Josh is ready to start podcasting again after he's settled in, we can get another episode out. But it's a very strange show. It's nothing like any of the other ones that I'm doing. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is kind of like some of the other ones I'm doing, because we do talk about toys and other crap that we often talk about on both Boogeyman's Closet and Count Creepyhead, but it's while both of us are ridiculously stoned. So it's a lot of fun to make. It's not a lot of fun to edit.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've heard those first couple of episodes, and yeah, they're really funny. But knowing what it takes to edit a podcast, it's like I can feel your pain.
Yeah. That second episode, there was, oh God, maybe 20 minutes edited out because there was some sound issues in the middle, and there was definitely some rambling from both of us. We're like, I don't think that should be part of the show, because we just ground it to a halt just talking about our day-to-day shit. So it's like, yeah, we'll edit that part out.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No one needs to know all those details, but And by Josh, of course, that is not me, Josh, but Josh Hibbard, purveyor of Pickman's Vinyls, another member of the Rad Pantheon that you can visit at radpantheon.com or find Pickman's Vinyls on all of the social medias. And with that, I will say thanks once again for tuning in to the Raise My Rentals program. If you had fun with us, leave us a comment, leave us a podcast rating. Let us know if we traumatized you with our triggering content and what we should improve next time. With that, I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we have to return some videotapes. Raised by Rentals is a member of the Rad Pantheon Network. Visit radpantheon.com to support rad stuff. The theme music is Forbidden Fruit by Velvet Bethany. You can purchase music and learn more at velvetbethany.com.
Necrotizing fasciitis caused by an invasive streptococcus.